end. And Ibn Abbas used to stop in every single verse, explaining when this verse was revealed, where it was revealed, why it was revealed. So all these three W's, yeah? When, where, why, and the meaning of every single word. So he said, I did this with him in some narration 10 times, in some narration 20 times. That's Ibn Abbas. So they used to call it ilm ta'wil. But later on, this word itself, this term ta'wil, we'll come to this, it took actually different interpretation. So later on, after the first 120 years, 120 Hijrah, then the scholars shift to the term at-tafsir rather than at-ta'wil. Yeah, because in ta'wil we will see why they shifted to this. And this is why Imam al-Tabari, Shaykh al-Mufassirin, this is his title, Imam al-Mufassirin, Shaykh al-Mufassirin. And we open here bracket and I'll add something. You see how the folks, how the people, those who does not have knowledge. You see that Imam al-Mufassirin, Shaykh al-Mufassirin, he used to know, they said, he used to know 60 sciences, field of knowledge. In Arabic, he was such an amazing scholar. In Tafsir, he composed a book of Tariq, history. He was the first one who wrote a work in history published now in more than 16 volumes. The history of the Muslim Ummah, and even from Adam alayhi salam till his time. This great Mufassir, this great Imam, when he died, rahimahullah, they could not bury him. Because those ignorant people, the folks, the Amma as we call them, those who think they know better, they condemn him as mubtada, as sahib bid'ah. And what they did actually to the door of his, they broke the door of his, and they wanted to bury him. He died. This led his family to bury Imam al-Tabari in his house, inside his actually house, and they could not take him to the maqbara, graveyard, and only, according to many narrations, only 15 people did janazah burial on this great Mufassir, Imam. And you see around you see how people there. This Imam who spent all his life serving the Quran, this is how the mass, the folks, the ignorant people, those people who think that they have the knowledge. So Imam Tabari, when he finished his book, so the title of his book, we just say Tafsir al-Tabari, but the official title is جامع البيان عن تأويل آي القرآن. جامع البيان can be translated as the comprehensive exposition عن تأويل آي القرآن, of the interpretation of the verses of the Quran. So this عن تأويل, when he didn't say عن تفسير, so عن تأويل آي القرآن. So this is why the Imam al-Tabari, well, he didn't use a tafsir. So what do we need in terms of tafsir? How these first generations, they used to look at the tafsir. We take this from Ibn Abbas because he was the leading expert on this, radiallahu anhu. He was 16 years old, roughly I think, maybe 17, when he was in the majlis, in the council of Umar ibn Khattab, the cabinets of Umar ibn Khattab, with these seniors of Sahaba, seniors. And they were not happy because these kids, 16 years old, sitting in the majlis of Umar ibn Khattab, deciding on the policies of the state, Well, they told Umar ibn Khattab, if you bring this, then we're going to bring our sons here. Then Umar radiallahu anhu, al-Muhaddith al-Mulham, he turned to them, he said, what can you say about إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحُ وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْهُ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفُورًا. What is your interpretation to this? Well, they said that what we said, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ, if you conquered Mecca and you entered Mecca, وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ, and you see people coming to Islam, groups after groups, فسبح بتسبيح سبحان الله بحمد ربك سبحان الله الحمد لله واستغفره إنه كان توابا. This is, he asked every single thing, and he turned to Ibn Abbas. He said, ما تقول فيها يا ابن عباس? What is your opinion on this, Ibn Abbas? Ibn Abbas went beyond this. He said, إذا جاء نصر الله إعلام بأجل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This surah is an indication that the death of the Prophet ﷺ is near. Because he said, لَيْسَ بَعْدَ الْكَمَالِ إِلَّا if finished, something finished, you have to depart. His mission is finished, then the Prophet ﷺ needs to depart and to leave this world. And Umar ibn Khattab, he said, وَاللَّهِ لَا أَعْلَمُ مِنْهَا إِلَّا مَا تَعْلَمُ. This is exactly the interpretation of Surah Al-Nasr. And then he turned to them, he said, for this reason, Ibn Abbas is here. For this reason. So Ibn Abbas, he advised his students when they asked him, what is tafsir? What is tafsir? He said, rahimahullah, at-tafsiru ala arba'ati awjuh. We have 4 aspects of tafsir. 4 aspects. وجه تعرفه العرب من كلامها. The first aspect is when you understand the Quran according to the Arabic language. This is how the Arabs used to speak. Then you have to go back to the Quran. If you need to know what's the meaning of قُلْ أَعُوذُ, what is أَعُوذُ, you have to go to the Arabs at that time, not now. How they used to speak. What's the meaning for أَعُوذُ for them? What is the meaning for them of الناس? What is قوم? And so on. So he said, وَجْهٌ تَعْرِفُهُ الْعَرَبُ مِنْ كَلَامِهَا. And here, Ibn Abbas actually, he was setting a rule that if you don't know Arabic, there is no way to do tafsir. No way. And not Arabic now, not contemporary Arabic. The Arabic, the media Arabic now that you hear in Al Jazeera, or you say in which dialect is near to the Fusha. There is no Fusha, there is no dialect near the. You have to go back to pre-Islamic era, the Arabic of the pre-Islamic era. وَتَفْسِيرٌ لَا يُعْذَرُ أَحَدٌ بِجَهَالَةٍ. And we do have some tafsir that every single one can understand it. If you say Rabbun Nas, well, no one can say that you're talking about something else. Rabbun Nas, this is clear for everyone. You don't need an expert to explain this to you. He said, يَعْرِفُهُ كُلُّ النَّاسِ. وَتَفْسِيرٌ يَعْلَمُهُ الْعُلَمَاء. And there is a tafsir. This is only for the scholars, for the ulama. So even you bring the Arabs and they said, according to our understanding this, but no, maybe that's quite ambiguous. We will see this ambiguity later on. So you need a alim. You need someone to bring different rules, again, for this tafsir. وَتَفْسِيرٌ لَا يَعْلَمُهُ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. There is tafsir, it's only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know it. Laylatul Qadr. Do we know Laylatul Qadr? We don't know Laylatul Qadr. Do we know what is Alif Lam Mim? This is muqatta'at. Hamim. Yeah, we do have maybe some ijtihadi opinions. But for sure, we don't know what is Hamim. Alif Lam Mim. Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Sad. Alif, Lam, Mim, Ra. What are these letters? Allahu A'lam. So, at Tafsir, the first one, let's go to talk about this little bit. So the first aspect, تفسير تعريفه العرب من كلامها. This is from the Arab. This is exactly, you need to go to the corpus, to the language, to the poetry of the Arabs before Islam. And I think I told you this, when Ibn Abbas himself was sitting because what Ibn Abbas was setting these rules, why he was saying this, by the way, I can give you context for this. At that time, Al-Khawarij were very active at that time, the Kharijites. And they used to explain the Quran as they understood the Quran from their own mentalities, from their own way of thinking. So they do their own interpretation. And Ibn Abbas, when he said, if you don't know Arabic, and some of these people, they were not, at that time, native speakers, of course. So they used different interpretations. So Ibn Abbas was trying to block the route for these people to get into the interpretation of the Quran. When he said this, one of the leaders of the Khawarij, Nafi' ibn al-Azraq, he came to him. Ibn Abbas used to pray the Fajr. That's at his late, actually, age, because he lost his sight, actually, blind, I think, at the age of 78, and he died around when he was in his 80s. But he was very active in terms of giving knowledge. So he used to start after Fajr with Tafsir until Duha, and then the people of the Arabic used to come to him, ask him about the Arabic language, and then later on about the poetry itself, and then later on about the halal wal haram, and later on about Ayyam al-Arab, the history of the Arabs. And he finished at Dhuhr. That was his schedule, Ibn Abbas. And he was at 70 years old. So Nafi' ibn al-Azraq, the leader of the Azariqa, the leader of the Khawarij, the Kharijites, he came to him after the Fajr. And he said, Ya Ibn Abbas, inni sa'iluka fa mughallidu laka fi mas'ala. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'll be harsh with you. Rude. Because that's the mentality of the Kharijat. They were rude, like the Arab, like Bedouins. They used to come to the Prophet and if we use our concept, they don't care. They don't have this adab with Prophet. They don't have. They come and they raise their voices, Ya Muhammad, and so on. So the same, Khawarij is the same. So he came and he said, فَإِنِّي مُغْلِقٌ عَلَيْكُمْ سَلَامٌ. He was going to challenge him, by the way. Because what he told him, I'm going to ask you questions. And he asked him actually 200 questions. 200. Unfortunately, we don't have all of them. Yeah? We have. Now it's published under سؤالات نافع بن الأزرق, the questions of Nafi' al-Azraq to Ibn Abbas. So he told him, I'm going to ask you for every single word, vocabulary in the Quran, and he was very selective. He was very clever. He was little and he was poet. And he said, you need to give me proof from the saying of the Arabs. So the poetry, you need to give me a line of poetry that the Arabs, yeah. So he started with, he said, وَفَاكِهَةً وَأَبَّا مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِأَنْعَامِكُم. That's the first question. He said, Ya Ibn Abbas, مَا الْأَبْ? What is al-ab? And Ibn Abbas said, al-ab غِذَاءُ الْأَنْعَامِ. Al-ab is the hay. The food of cattle, of horses, or camels. And he said, وَهَلْ تَعْرِفُ الْعَرَبُ هَذَا? That's the Arabs. They knew this. As he explained, he said, نعم. أما سمعت قول النابغة? Haven't you heard the saying, the poetry of a nabiga, which one of the greats, about so and so and so? And same said, what is this? And then when he said, when Ibn Abbas said, وَهَلْ تَعْرِفُ الْعَرَبُ هَذَا? And Ibn Abbas would reply, نعم أما سمعتها. Did you hear so? They said, حتى ضجر منه ابن عباس. Until Ibn Abbas was fed up with him. Near the Dhuhr. And he was asking him this question. Until Ibn Abbas saw a great poet at that time, Umar ibn Abi Rabi'a, who used even to compose a poetry praising women and the beauty of women and so on. So Ibn Abbas would just turn into this Umar ibn Abi Rabi'a. He said, what's up? Do you have any news? Do you compose any poetry praising women? And they said, yes. Umar ibn Abi Rabi'a was 25 years old. He's like Shakespeare now for the Arab English literature. And he recited one of his beautiful pieces of poetry. I mean, أنت غادي فمبكر غداة غد رائع فمهجر, describing one of his neighbors' women and how she's beautiful and so on. Such beautiful lines, 70 lines. And Ibn Abbas was amazing. Wow, mashallah, mashallah. In the haram. And this guy, those people who think, they pray 2 rak'ahs, that's al-Khawarij. 2 rak'ahs, and they have all these sign of sujood there. And he said, Allah, Ibn Abbas. Come on, Ibn Abbas, we came to you, asking you about halal and haram. And someone like this, who's totally an ignorant man, coming to you, chanting, singing, talking about the haram, describing women and beautiful women. فَتُعْرِضُ عَنَّا, and then you ignore us, and you listen to this haram. And Ibn Abbas he said, Wallahi ma qala haraman. By Allah, he didn't say any haram. Wallahi ma qala haram. It's such beautiful story, it's a long story. But the issue here, why in Nafi' ibn Azraq, he said, no, he said haram. He said, where did you hear haram? Then Nafi' ibn Azraq, he quoted one line from these 70 lines. He said so and so. But he didn't get it, actually, he didn't get the line in Quran. He changed it 3 words. And Ibn Abbas said, no, he didn't say it. No, he didn't. You said this, but he didn't say it. Then, this Nafi' ibn Azraq, he said, أحفظتها? Did you memorize? And he was 83 years old. Did you memorize? He said, yes. وإن شئت أثبتها. If you want me then to recite back to you, he said, yes, please, do recite from me. Tell me. And then he, Ibn Abbas, recited this. Then Nafi' stopped asking him. He said, Wallahi ma ra'aytu ahadan ahfadha minka qad. Wallahi, by Allah, I've never ever seen someone who's got an amazing ability to memorize like you. So Ibn Abbas was setting this rule as a barrier for these people. If you don't know this, you're asking me about al-ab, and you come and you're killing people, as you know what the Khawarij did, in the name of this, la hukma illa lillah. So you don't know anything. So that's the first. The second one is TAFSIR الذي لا يعذر أحد بجهله, which is available to everyone, the second aspect. And Ibn Abbas here is referring to tadabbur, as we explained maybe in Ramadan. So is كتاب أنزلناه إليك مبارك ليدبروا آياته, to reflect on these verses. And we said, every single, even non-Muslims, and I told you the story of Muhammad Asad and how he reflected on Surah Takathur, even he wasn't a Muslim before. And we asked our brothers and sisters who accepted Islam, who converted or reverted to Islam, because how they accepted Islam. How? They did tadabbur. Without tadabbur, they cannot accept Islam. And you ask everyone, you ask those brothers and sisters, how did you hear the same, not the same story in general, but different details. So that's Al-Hajj Malcolm X, rahimahullah, Shaheed Malcolm X, in his beautiful narration of Al-Hajj. And the explanation himself also, how he explained the ayat of Al-Hajj, and how he saw that the equality in the Quran. Ya ayyuhan nasu inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. Such an amazing, in his biography, you can read that an amazing, touching explanation from Malcolm X. And he rejected the idea of the Nation of Islam when they turned it from the extreme to the extreme, because they didn't get the right message to fight the white racism. They went to the extreme, to the black racism. That Malcolm X, through tadabbur, he found that it doesn't work. It doesn't work. How he did this, he got access to tafsir, which everyone, not only Muslims, even non-Muslims. وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ. We made this Quran easy for remembering the, if we can say, the general meaning of the Quran, the basic, the foundations, the teachings of the Quran. No one can argue about this. And then the third one, تفسير الذي يعلمه العلماء, and this is very technical because the ulama, they talk about terminology, so they have their own terms to explain this. It's like same thing, when you go to a doctor and trying to explain to you something, gives you general explanation. They cannot go into details because we cannot get the detail. And same thing in any discipline, in any field of knowledge. If it's not your expertise, you cannot understand. If you get to, I don't know, those maybe who get with networking in computer science and Cisco networking, and I have friends of mine who are working on this and try to talk to you using terminology of this, well, we cannot get the same. التفسير الذي لا يعلمه إلا الله. And then ولا يحيطون به علما. This is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. And the Quran هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات فأما الذين في قلوبهم زيغ فيتبعون ما تشابه منه ابتغاء الفتنة وابتغاء تأويله وما يعلم تأويله إلا الله. So only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows this. And Allah can open gates for some of His servants to get the meaning of certain verses. This is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, Shaykh al-Islam, he used to say that I used to stop at certain verses and check all the tafsirs and could not find something persuading that, well, it's convincing. No, it is not. He said, then leaning to the dua, he used to make dua after Fajr and in al-Ashar, in Suhoor, by this supplication. He always said, Ya mu'allima Ibrahim allimni. Oh, the teacher of Ibrahim, teach me. Keep saying this, also with sincerity. He said, فَيُفْتَحُ عَلَيْهِ. And then after that, I can see some meanings which I've never ever heard from anyone. So that's a blessing, that's a barakah. It can happen to anyone. Of course, you have to have the tools. So that's the هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات. Some of the others always ask, to what extent we can go for tadabbur? And that's a very good question, because sometimes you hear those maybe who rely only on the translation of the Quran. And by the way, it's always also a matter of terminology. Some when they hear you saying the translation of the Quran, say, don't say this. No, they have to say the translation of the meaning of the Quran. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. Because we know that if this is the case, those who argue, because sometimes, we don't know, as I said, we tend to make some judgments and some conclusion without knowing what's going on in the field for the last 14 centuries. If you say that, I have this with one brother, he's saying actually to say the translation of the Quran is haram, you have to say the translation of the meaning of the Quran. And I told him, you take any book, do we say تفسير معاني القرآن or تفسير القرآن? You say تفسير القرآن. تفسير القرآن. And what is translation? What is translation? What is it? It's tafsir. A translation is an interpretation. It's your interpretation. You take this meaning from a language, from the original language, to another language. So whether you say our Salaf, they didn't say تفسير معاني القرآن. No, they said تفسير القرآن. And you take Ibn Kathir there, you take Tabari, you say تفسير Ibn Kathir. Not تفسير Ibn Kathir لمعاني القرآن. So it doesn't make sense. Whether you say تفسير معاني القرآن, so the interpretation of the meaning of the Quran, the translation of the meaning of the Quran. If you say the translation of the Quran, also it's okay. There is no harm at all. Yeah. And the argument is, we don't know. You don't translate the Quran is only in English, in Arabic. So what we're doing now is an English translation. So you cannot say the translation of the Quran, but you have to say of the meaning of the Quran. How do you know that this is the meaning of the Quran? How do you know? So it's Quran. So here it's only a matter of terminology. You like to say the translation of the meaning of the Quran, Bismillah, you say it. You like to say the translation of the Quran, you say it. Because that wasn't a problem for the early, and even when Abu Hanifa, when they asked him about Tarjamatul Quran ila al-Farisiyya, they asked Abu Hanifa centuries ago. That issue was that time, one of the Persian, he asked him, I cannot speak, because Abu Hanifa was able to speak Farsi. He said, I cannot speak Arabic. Can I pray with Farsi? Can I pray with the interpretation of the Quran? When he asked him, he didn't say, Tarjama to Ma'ani al-Quran, the interpretation or the translation of the meaning of the Quran. He said, هل يمكنني أن أصلي بتفسير بترجمة القرآن? So there is no harm. Again, you need to go back to our heritage to see how our scholars dealt with this. So back to our question: what is actually the relationship between? How can we go? Can we go far? Yes, that was the question. Can we go far in tadabbur, and how much can we go? Here, we said that the tadabbur are two levels. The first level, it's your own experience, your tajriba imaniyah, all this, tajriba imaniyah. And I always give this example. When you hear someone, we have our brother, Abdul Malik, Algeria, who lost his mother, rahimahullah, just 2 days ago. May Allah bless her, inshallah, and grant her Jannah. When we hear this, when someone, brother was pulling me and said, the Malik mother passed away. But I said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, rahimahullah, and that's it. But my experience of receiving this news, it's not like my brother the Malik. No, because that was his mother. So the way how Abdul Malik was saying, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, he was immersing himself in the verse. He was living the verse. He was diving in the meaning of the verse. Because of the experience. Because that's your experience. You lost your mother. So when you say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, wow. You say it from the bottom of your heart. But if you hear someone passed away, say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, rahimahullah, taqabbalahullah, that's it, and you go. Assalamu alaikum. This is the nature. So what you get from tadabbur, what I got actually from this is not the same as Abdul Malik got. Absolutely huge difference. And when you are sick, when you are in state of depression, mentally ill, and you making this dua, رَبِّ إِنِّي مَسَّنِيَ الضُّرُّ وَأَنْتَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. You make this dua with all your limbs, with your heart, with your, even the way how you raise your hands, it makes difference. But if you do mechanical dua, رَبِّ إِنِّي مَسَّنِيَ الضُّرُّ وَأَنْتَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ, سبحان Allah, alhamdulillah. That's the tadabbur, that's the level of tadabbur. So when you live the experience, and then again, back to our brothers and sisters who accepted Islam, when they reach certain points and they feel lost, and in a point they did in different ways, and they turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, asking Him for guidance. So this is exactly the moment that they live the experience. They live it better than anyone. So here you can do tadabbur, you can do your own tadabbur. But the next level, like what for example I'm doing this every Monday and Thursday, tadabbur also. You say وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى, you explain. I mean, you cannot, you have to have some knowledge. Some brothers are asking me, Muhammad, where did you get this? I didn't get this from Tisco's or such, because I mean, of course it's through reading these, through the last 35 years I'm reading this literature, I mean, accumulation of knowledge, searching. You don't think I'll just come here and deliver my lecture without preparing. It takes me hours of preparation. So you cannot say, well, duha means so and so, and you don't know this. No, you have to have knowledge. And let's say tadabbur. You say tadabbur here, and you say, first, wasjud waqtarib, and then inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr, and you try to link between these two. You have to have knowledge. Well, you cannot hear guessing. If you guess the meaning of the Quran, it's kabira min al-kabair, it's a major sin, it's haram. We cannot do this. You have to have knowledge. So that's actually how can we distinguish between tadabbur and tafsir, and two levels of tadabbur. So if we can, level is on your experience, faith experience, and the next level is getting to tafsir. Next week, inshallah, we'll talk about hukm al-tafsir, if it is mustahab halal, and we will talk about the main two schools of tafsir. Tafsir bil-ra'i wa tafsir bil-athar. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. If you don't have questions, we can finish now. Otherwise,
I have one question.
yeah.
Concerning poetry in Islam. Considering the Surah Shu'ara, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking وَالشُّعَرَاءِ يَتَّبِعُهُمُ الْغَاوُونَ, and then the next ayah said أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّهُمْ فِي كُلِّ وَادٍ يَهِيمُونَ. So how do we consider poetry in Islam? Pertaining these two ayahs.
What comes after it?
وَعَمَّنْ يَقُولُونَ مَا لَا يَفْعَلُونَ
What comes after it?
إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ.
And one of the, let's say that Brother Jibril is asking about poetry. I mean, our scholars are under opinion, again, just now, I'm saying this again and again, because we lost, I mean, the colonial powers, after all the Muslim world actually were colonized, we lost our connection to the traditional teaching. Our teaching used to be based on books, and we know exactly, you are Malik, you are Shafi'i, Hanbali, whatever, you want to study tafsir, you want to study grammar, we know exactly the syllabus, we know the books that you have to follow. We know that from 14 centuries, if you don't know the poetry, if you, that Ibn Abbas was reciting the poetry in the Masjid al-Haram. that the poetry of the Prophet ﷺ, what he did, when one of the great slaves and the great tribes of the Arabic Peninsula came to him, what they told him? They told him, إذا غلب خطيبنا خطيبا وشاعرنا شاعرا إذا أسلمنا إذا غلب خطيبك خطيبا. If so, we have our khatib, our speaker, like now, the media, the spokesperson, they have their spokesperson. If your spokesperson defeat our spokesperson, and if your poet, which Hassan, defeats our poet, will accept Islam. The Prophet he said yes. He said yes. Yeah, go ahead. Bring your khatib, bring your spokesperson, and they someone, and the Prophet okay, asked one of these great khataba, he said, go on. And they said yes, yours is better than us. Then comes to poetry. Where is your poet? And then okay, give some lines of poetry, and they start reciting this poetry. And the Prophet turned to Hassan ibn Thabit, the great companion in his poetry. He is, in terms of now modern terms, his media, his TV, something like that, delivering the news. And he said, "Uhjuhum wa ruhul qudus." Jibril is with you. Just say this, and Jibril is with you. And he composed one of the beautiful lines praising the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the Dawaib al-Mifir wa Idwati qad sallu lin-nas, until he says, "Akrim biqawmin Rasulullah qa'iduhum." Praise people, their leader is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. "Akrim biqawmin Rasulullah qa'iduhum idha tafarraqat al-ahwa'u wash-shiya'u." Such beautiful, and then they accept Islam because they hear that beautiful poetry. So, and then that's the same question the Prophet was asking. What about the shu'ara, those who compose the poetry? And the Prophet said, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, because shu'ara, they said, أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّهُمْ يَقُولُونَ مَا لَا يَفْعَلُونَ. They always claim they're doing things, but actually they don't do it. And this is what's poetry. Poetry is about lying. But إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. And I know someone who actually converted to Islam, not because he read about Islam, not because he read the poetry of Muhammad Iqbal, Allama Iqbal, the great Muslim thinker, Indian, who's, when you read his, even I read them actually in Arabic, translated into Arabic, and it was composed in Urdu and in Farsi. But subhanallah, when I read them in Arabic, you say, wow, this man is such beauty. Where did he get all this? I know this guy actually was American. Yes, he just converted to Islam from the poetry of Muhammad Iqbal, rahimahullah. Only because he didn't read the Quran. And where Muhammad Iqbal got all this? From the Quran, from the teaching of the Quran. He's got these famous lines of shakwa. Shakwa, making dua to Allah subhanahu. His name Shakwa, even I think in Urdu is Shakwa. Is anyone? Shakwa. Yeah, see. Beautiful, amazing. When you read it, touching you. So this is why our scholars are in the opinion, if we actually argue one word of the Quran, what is the meaning? We have to go back to pre-Islamic poetry and bring the proof from there. If you don't find it, then you cannot claim that this is the meaning of this word according to the Prophet. So, it's not share, of course. No, it's not share. We have to distinguish between these, because even themselves, the Arabs, they try to accusing the Prophet ﷺ that he's saying share. And when they said, Walid ibn Utbah, he said, this is not poetry. We know the poetry. We know the poetry, and this is not the poetry. This is not a piece of poetry. This is Quran. So he's refuting their claim it is poetry. But for themselves, the Prophet ﷺ, he used to have 5 poets. Abdullah ibn Rawaha. Even his uncle Abu Talib was one of the great poets. And he composed an amazing line praising the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to hear this, used to listen to people reciting the pieces of poetry, lines of poetry. So there is no issue on this. But of course, he said it's not Shia. This is not Shia. Yeah. So you have to admit that this is Kalam Allah and is nothing to do with Shia. We use the Shia, the poetry, to take the meaning of every single word from this corpus and from this literature. Time for Adhan, Al-Kabir. Huh? 1 minute. Yeah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum. Yes, جواب الشكوى صح. جزاك الله خير. رحمه الله.